Coming up, right now I'm reading this French translation of Anne Applebaum's latest book, Autocracy Inc. With the unfolding events in Trump's America, it really couldn't form a more relevant basis for this week's Truth to Power video. Applebaum's book warned us of a new world where kleptocracy, authoritarianism and democracy are intertwined. And this week saw the National Guard and Marines on the streets of Los Angeles on the pretext of beating down some localised protests against Gestapo-style immigration raids. Largely peaceful protesters are being met with armed soldiers. Just one aspect of America's new autocracy. And if you think it couldn't happen here in the UK, then just look at the current opinion polls. Nigel Farage, Brexit fraudster and Trump fanboy, is currently 6 points ahead of Labour. Farage's latest political vehicle, Reform 2025 Limited, are now waiting in the wings, ready to emulate Trump's strategies from Doge to human rights here in the UK. Stay tuned. This week saw Marines being deployed on US soil to suppress protests sparked by sweeping immigration raids. Trump going rogue, you might think. Or alternatively, Trump delivering on his election promises. Well, this definitely isn't Trump going rogue. It's all part of the plan outlined in Project 2025, the ultra-conservative Heritage Foundation far-right blueprint, which guides Trump's second term in office. Reading Anne Applebaum's book, Autocracy Inc., while events in America this week unfolded, it became blindingly obvious to me that Trump's confrontational decisions and inflammatory actions are the next round in a rigged game, played by a corrupt autocracy and enforced by armed services stripped of those generals who refuse to buy into the MAGA worldview. A National Guard and Marines whose MAGA-shaped leadership are now loyal to President Trump rather than to the US Constitution. Applebaum's book asserts that autocracies are run not by one bad guy, but by sophisticated networks relying on kleptocratic financial structures, a complex of security services, to which Trump has added the military. Project 2025 is his basis for a sweeping plan to dismantle democratic checks, purge the civil service of anyone not completely MAGA, the end of judicial independence, the scrapping of environmental protections, the gutting of workers' rights, and, as we've seen this week, the unleashing of federal power on political enemies like governors of democratic-leaning so-called blue states like Gavin Newsom in California. Trump is building an autocratic regime before our eyes, and his admirers in Europe, Bardella and Orban, Vidal and Farage, are following events like it's a YouTube instruction video. And talking of YouTube videos, if you're enjoying this one, please remember to give it a like, check that you're subscribed to the channel, leave a comment below and share a link on your social media. Access to my videos will always remain free, but if you want to support the channel further, you might think about joining the membership program, which offers perks like early access to videos, members-only content and priority replies to your comments. There's a link below for further details. But back to autocracy and specifically Trump. This is one of his many autocratic pronouncements on Truth Social this week. Los Angeles has been invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals. These lawless riots not only strengthen our resolve, I am directing all relevant departments to liberate Los Angeles from the migrant invasion. It sounds like the mad ravings of a man with Tiananmen Square fetish. And sure enough, after a little research, I discovered that indeed Trump did praise China once for the massacre of peaceful protesters in Tiananmen Square. It was back in 1989, he said, "They were vicious, they were horrible, but they put it down with strength. That shows you the power of strength." The power of strength? Typical Trumpian gobbledygook that sounds more like AI slop than anything a real human would say. Power of strength? How about the dumbness of stupidity? That would be more appropriate. And no, I didn't use ChatGPT to come up with it. Trump is governing by force and for the spectacle. He runs his administration like one big reality show. Trump is using a military whose purpose is to fight foreign enemies to police American citizens on their own streets. Governor Gavin Newsom of California called it a brazen abuse of power.
This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people our officers, and even our National Guard at risk.
And he's right. This military deployment wasn't a response to a request from the governor. This was Trump acting unilaterally in an attempt to stir up trouble and inflame the situation for political gain. There's also the bonus that it's a distraction from his many, many failings as president. The US Marines aren't legally authorised for domestic law enforcement, and yet there they are. According to legal experts, this move isn't just purposefully inflammatory, it's likely unconstitutional. As columnist Jamel Bowie wrote in the New York Times this week, it's not clear that the Guard, once called out, can legally do anything. The President has no authority under 10 U.S.C. 12406 to deploy Marines for law enforcement. It's a rejection of fundamental American values. In Autocracy Inc, Applebaum makes this chillingly clear. Autocracy offers its members not only money and security, but also something less tangible: impunity. Trump isn't hiding his authoritarian instincts, he's testing the boundaries. And with the Democrats suffering a collapse in self-confidence, still slinking away with their tail between their legs following the 2024 election defeat, no one appears to be capable of standing up to Trump. So far, so American, but while it might seem like a world away, just imagine Nigel Farage and his band of reform misfits and former hard-right Tories having the power to purge civil servants, rewrite human rights law, or turn Britain's police force into his own personal force. Because those ideas are exactly what he's already floated on this side of the Atlantic. The protests in America have been mostly peaceful, yet there was some property damage, but LA police said they could handle it. So why the escalation? Because just as much as narcissists take any criticism like a murder attempt, so Trump equates any opposition with treason. In his own words, speaking about a possible protest at today's military parade / big boy birthday bash.
And we're going to be celebrating big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protester who wants to come out, they will be met with very big force. By the way, for those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force. And I haven't even heard about a protest, but, you know, this is people that hate our country. But they will be met with very heavy force. The
polls show that most Americans don't want his bloody stupid parade. Most military veterans don't want his stupid parade. And even among veterans who identify as Republican voters, 54% of them oppose the parade. But according to Trump, then, the vast majority of Americans must really hate their country. And by the way, he wasn't talking about violent protests. He said any protests. This isn't about keeping order. This is about waging war on democracy. Trump thinks he projects strength by saying things like this, but real strength isn't pointing a gun at someone the moment they disagree with you. That just makes it look like you've already lost the argument, which of course he has. That's why most polls in America are already telling us that Trump's Republican Party are leeching support this year. As the New York Times Bowie says, strong, confident regimes are not in the habit of meeting protests with military force. The Trump administration seems to have exactly one tool at its disposal: blunt force. So this looks like a regime that's panicking, no longer believing in persuasion of the electorate, just their intimidation.
To my right, we got about 50 to 60 protesters all out here chanting and singing together, holding up signs, enjoying the honks of drivers by. Incredibly calm, incredibly peaceful, just people together exercising their First Amendment right and their desire for justice. To my left, we have an extreme display of military force.
And don't forget, Farage loves Trump, mimics him, campaigns with him, speaks his language of division, suspicion and nationalist delusion. The same playbook, just with a Union Jack flag on the cover. But back to Applebaum. The subtitle of the French translation of her book Autocracy is Quand les dictateurs s'associent pour diriger le monde. Pardon my accent, but that translates as When dictators team up to rule the world. And it's clear that Trump isn't operating in a vacuum. His collusion with Putin is in the open and evident to see and hear. There are some who say even his trade spats with Xi's China are a mere spectacle, with all those threatened tariffs now melting away. And within Washington, Trump has built a MAGA loyalist empire. Fox News presenter Pete Hegseth at Defense, culture warrior Kristi Noem at Homeland Security, homophobic anti-Medicaid Pam Bondi as Attorney General, all willing to follow orders, no matter how unlawful. Applebaum again. Autocracy Inc. offers not just power, but a kind of faith-based immunity. So these people don't fear prosecution, they fear Trump. And it could happen here in the UK with Farage. Look at the hollowing out of public institutions under the Tories, the appointment of cronies and donors to the BBC board, quangos and cultural organisations, the culture war distractions of Kemi Badenoch, the attacks on judicial independence by the law-breaking Boris Johnson, the confected narrative of Truss and Farage's so-called deep state. And although Truss crashed and burned following her skirmish with the lettuce, Farage is the new Truss, the new frontman for a British Autocracy Inc, waiting for his shot at emulating Trump. If the current presidential assault on American constitutional rights goes unanswered, it will become the new normal and will embolden Farage to continue on his current MAGA-like path. Trump is just testing the boundaries, pushing the envelope, and Farage is watching and learning. Anne Applebaum warns us, democracy doesn't fall with a bang. It erodes, manipulated by grifters in suits and generals on standby. Here in Britain, the great Brexit betrayal has left us vulnerable to an erosion of standards, the normalisation of hate speech, misogyny and xenophobia. The question is, are we going to learn from America's mistake in electing Trump again, or repeat it in the hue of Pantone 311?